You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean Reynolds, the owner of Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds & Kline Appraisal, and your host of this episode of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Today, we're talking about Chuck E. Cheese. Chuck E. Cheese. If you're a parent over the last 20 years, more than likely you have been to Chuck E. Cheese. And the headline on this one is Chuck E. Cheese wants to destroy 7 billion prize tickets. Why would they do that? You need to find out and follow the rest of this podcast, see what we're talking about. Let's jump on in. This is a fun article that I found in CNN. I talk a lot about Seattle, kind of on the peripheral of Seattle politics and business and real estate. Every now and then, you got to just throw in a fun post, a fun podcast, because otherwise life is too short and we end up talking about serious stuff that everybody gets all worked up about. This is not one of those. It is because Chuck E. Cheese is in bankruptcy, but let's check in and see how that's going. So, here it is from New York. This might qualify as a kid's wildest dream, a mountain of 7 billion Chuck E. Cheese prize tickets. And I mentioned that if you've been a parent in the last 20 years, you've gone to Chuck E. Cheese. For those of you who don't have a Chuck E. Cheese near to you, or a Chuck E. Cheese, you've never been to a Chuck E. Cheese, or maybe you're older or too young. I don't know if Chuck E. Cheese is still in operation. I know we have one here in Bellevue, but with the whole COVID thing, I was asking my cousin Camille, who's got little kids, if she's been there, and she didn't know if they were even open with the whole advent of the Rona. But Chuck E. Cheese has this giant rat as its mascot that greets you when you first walk in. It's this super bright, loud, think change coming out of a vending machine, ching, 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 or maybe a casino sound, the ching, 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 ching the whole time. And then you've got these characters that do a little dance up on the stage, and it's terrible pizza. I'm not painting a very good picture of Chuck E. Cheese for parents, but for kids, it's probably the greatest thing ever, because you get these tokens, or you get these tickets, which are just like little tiny tickets. I don't know. It's like a ticket stub you'd get at the movie theater, but you can turn them in for prizes and things like that. Or you can play, can you play video games with them? I can't remember. It's been so long since my kids were Chuck E. Cheese age. But I remember many a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese. And as a parent, they were just kind of something you struggled through because your kids enjoyed the experience so much. Maybe you'd have a little birthday cake, the kids would get all the presents. But it was just this visual and auditory assault on the senses, right? I mean, that's what it was as a parent. You're like, oh my gosh, let me get through this next 2 or 3 hours. And if we can do that, then my week is just done. So 7 billion Chuck E. Cheese prize tickets are enough to fill 65 shipping containers, each 40 feet long, with tiny pieces of paper emblazoned with the image of the chain's mascot, a rat named Chuck. I always thought that was funny. It's a rat. Chuck E. Cheese, it's a rat. Not a mouse, a rat. And enough to cash in for $9 million in Chuck E. Cheese prizes. So 7 billion Chuck E. Cheese prizes equals $9 million worth of Chuck E. Cheese prize currency. But soon enough, those tickets could be destroyed without ever getting into the eager, pizza-stained hands of the eatery's young customers. How sad is that? These little kids will never get those 7 billion Chuck E. Cheese tickets. That's sad. The chain, whose parent company filed for bankruptcy earlier this week, asked a bankruptcy court judge for permission to spend more than $2 million to purchase and destroy the tickets, which were printed before the June bankruptcy filing, but were never delivered. So you always kind of wonder. I just went into, I don't know if it's a very big chain, but it was Pier 1 is kind of it's a furniture store. I think it's a chain. I'm not sure. We've got a bunch here in the Pacific Northwest, but I don't know if they're anywhere else. It's kind of like inexpensive World Market, I think, is another chain. I don't even know. I don't do a lot of furniture shopping. I don't really care about furniture. It doesn't really matter to me. But I was in a store that was at their like 90% off sale a couple of weeks ago. And you always kind of wonder, what happens to all this stuff when they're at the end of a business cycle where the company is either going out of business or is going into bankruptcy? And so that's why this post to me was like, wow, this is what's going on with $7 million or $9 million in Chuck E. Cheese prizes. They will probably get just shredded. But because they're an asset with $9 million worth of value, they have to go through the bankruptcy court and get the judge's permission. Hey, let's shred these. The other thing that kind of came to mind is, well, what happens when Chuck E. Cheese is closed? Is there a secondary market where you can exchange tokens from Chuck E. Cheese? No, there's not. That's just not happening. So what if you don't shred them and you just kind of go out of business and let them go? Well, there's got to be some kind of thing with the with spending $2 million to purchase and destroy the tickets, which were printed before the June bankruptcy filing but never delivered. That's awkward. We've got all these tickets. We don't know what to do with them. Your Honor, we would like to shred we'd like to spend $2 million to shred $7 million worth of Chuck E. Cheese tickets. That's where we're at right now. What an awkward conversation. I wonder if the judge is like, okay, this is one of the weirder requests I've had, but all right, let's do it. Yep, you guys can do it. That makes sense. Even before the pandemic, the chain was shifting to e-tickets, which reduced wait times in the chain's 612 locations and cut overall costs associated with the tickets. Now, the other thing is oftentimes companies, they reemerge from bankruptcy and they just kind of do their own thing. But they're able to reemerge and they come out with less debt and they're a leaner, meaner fighting machine, right? Until they go into bankruptcy again, and then maybe they're finally done then. That's what you see so often. Maybe they get little injection capital from an angel investor. Who knows? Any of those things could happen, but maybe Chuck E. Cheese is going to stick around. Let's keep going here. With the COVID-19 pandemic, the shift was accelerated to provide more contact-free service. But the rapid shift left its suppliers stuck with a mountain of 7 billion printed tickets that Chuck E. Cheese no longer wants or needs. How many of these tickets do you go through? It's got to be just a ton. And how many locations there? 612 locations. Okay, so each one has to have the tickets printed up. I guess maybe per store, that's not that many. But 7 billion, that just seems like a lot. Or 1 million just seems like a lot. Under bankruptcy law, a company must seek court permission to spend money on anything. Chuck E. Cheese lawyers argue that it is better to pay to destroy the tickets already produced than to risk having them fall into the hands of the general public. Oh no, the general public might get tickets, and then what are they going to do with them? That's what I always kind of think. Well, Chuck E. Cheese is no longer accepting them, and they're out there. Can they spend them? I don't know. My kids would always spend them on the most ridiculous of things, which is some like stuffed animal or maybe a sticker or a fake tattoo or something along those lines. One of those things that at the end of the car ride home, they're on the floor and the kids no longer really care. But at the time, it's super critical to get your Chuck E. Cheese prize because that's your memento from going home. Unless you're at a really rich kid's party and you've got a party favor bag, and that's what you take home. Maybe some really cool stuff in there on top of your Chuck E. Cheese prize, whatever that might be. I don't know. Those are just memories I have of gutting through the Chuck E. Cheese experience. The pizza at Chuck E. Cheese, not delicious. I think they also had a salad bar too, but it's kind of like going to McDonald's to get a salad. That's not going to happen either. Give me a number 9, I think it was, which was the double cheeseburger, supersized at McDonald's before they realized that supersizing anything wasn't probably great for the health-conscious American. And when they started serving salads at McDonald's, that's when things really went sideways. Because who goes to McDonald's? Yep, I'm on a diet. I think I'll go to McDonald's. Doesn't happen, right? You know what? I don't want just a 16 or a 20-ounce Coke. I want a 32-ounce Coke and supersize that bad boy. Just make it as big as you can. Yeah, that's what McDonald's is for. Is just get as many of those terrible chemicals for you in, have that massive carbohydrate shot hit your system. Maybe a large French fries, because you got to get the French fries supersized too, right? It's like going to Chuck E. Cheese to get good food. You just don't do that. It's not a thing. But in its filing, the company said the $2.3 million it proposes to spend on the tickets is a cost which is far lower than the cost to the company should these prize tickets be circulated to the general public and presented for redemption. So maybe Chuck E. Cheese is going to stick around in business. Maybe for generations to come, Chuck E. Cheese is going to be a real thing. I don't know, but I always thought it was just something for your kids, something that you did. And I do have fond memories of the kids being that age and going to Chuck E. Cheese and doing that kind of thing. But moving forward with the whole COVID thing, birthday parties like that, are those going to happen? Are you going to have birthday parties where 30 kids all gang up together and go into a restaurant and just hang around? I don't think so. I mean, we're not doing that at school right now, are we? I hear some of the biggest struggles with parents who are trying to work at home and yet at the same time are trying to do like 6 hours of Zoom session with a teacher online or however they do it. I don't even really know how they do it because my kids are old enough where that's just not a reality for me. So I try and pay attention to what my friends and family say is normal for school these days, but it sounds so frustrating that I kind of just move on mentally and I'm like, good Lord, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. That sounds just like a horror show. Because, I mean, what kid is actually going to want to sit there and look at a monitor for that long? Say you got a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. They'll sit at a computer screen like at Chuck E. Cheese all day long and bang out their fun there. But a computer to do their learning? I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure. Some of my fondest memories as a kid are going on family vacation, and we got $20 worth of quarters with my Uncle Gary Jones from Newhall Jones, Encore Development, Northwest Traditions in Real Estate, and a slew of other companies, and spending 80 quarters playing Asteroids at a Asteroids machine down in Talavana Inn in Astoria, down in the coast of Oregon. That's kind of where you go when you vacation from Seattle and you don't want to fly anywhere. You go down to the coast of Oregon and hang out there. But I played a lot of video games as a kid, and I know kids play a lot of video games when they go to whatever restaurant or whatever it is, because video games are still a thing, and they've been a huge thing at Chuck E. Cheese for years and years. But with the advent of all this online gaming, and you've got a phone, you've got a cell phone now, kids don't really do that. So are they going to be going to these environments where you've got video games, maybe some bad pizza, maybe these other influences, or is this just kind of a ruse for parents to get their kids out of the house? Oh, let's go do something. Don't really care what it is. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon because I certainly don't see any kids' activities going on. I was in a mall maybe a week ago and I went past, I think it's called Gymboree, and that's where you have a whole bunch of little kids playing on indoor kids' toys, I guess it would be. It's just like one facility, and the kids just run around and they climb up ladders and go down slides and stuff like that. But man, that bad boy is still closed down. That franchise cannot be doing well. So you've got places that cater to crowds of little kids. You got school events. You've got office meetings. All of these things just not happening. And the future moving forward for like a Chuck E. Cheese, that can't be good, right? And that's why I think we're looking at bankruptcy here, and maybe their business model. So many of these businesses that are going out of business are because even before the pandemic, they were not doing well. I was just reading a story, and I think I'm going to probably do a podcast on it. Who was it? Somebody was estimating that 60% of the business closures, it was like, who was it? I can't remember. 60% of the business closures that have happened during the pandemic are now permanent. So a lot of the businesses who closed down, they weren't sure if they're going to open up. Over half of them are like, yep, nope, not happening. So that to me is like, this is having a major, major impact. And so many of these companies like Chuck E. Cheese that depend on people being in close quarters, not happening. let alone eating food. I mean, you can barely go into a restaurant and kind of get that whole experience down. You can here in Bellevue and you can in Seattle, but it's this weird experience. You go into these restaurants and you look around and you're like, man, all this is set up for takeout. They have wildly changed their business model. In a place like Chuck E. Cheese, you can't really do that because the whole thing is about the experience, right? It's about going in and hearing all these sounds, playing video games, running around, chasing your friends, maybe eating a slice or two of really bad pizza that the company knows that they're going to push down the parents and the kids' throat because they're there for the experience. We're not having that. And I don't think we're going to have that anytime soon. So many of these businesses are done. They're gone. And it's kind of sad. But Chuck E. Cheese is one of those businesses that I'm like, you know, I'm sad my kids won't ever be able to go there, even though they're old. You always want your kids to have fun, and you remember the fun memories, and you kind of forget about how painful it was. But Chuck E. Cheese was pretty painful, not going to lie. So that's kind of it for this one. But finishing off, Bankruptcy Court Judge Marvin Isgur has yet to rule on the motion, but he has scheduled a virtual hearing for next week to consider it. We have no more in-person hearings. You can't just go there with your attorney and get your hearing. You got to have a virtual hearing for next week to consider it, along with more pedestrian issues. So they know that the ticket is the big thing. We're going to talk about the tickets, and we're going to spend $2 million. $2 million, is that really how much it costs to shred that many tickets? It seems like you just get a couple of shredders and start going. And you pay somebody like $15 an hour and you shred a lot of tickets. That's beyond me. My ticket shredding skills are non-existent. I have a shredder, but I wouldn't want to be responsible for shredding $2 million worth of $2.3 million. No, it's going to cost $2.3 million. You don't care at this point. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Sean Reynolds from Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds and Kline Appraisal. But when I do have word back from Judge Marvin Isgur on whether how he's going to rule on the motion, like, no, you can't do that. You can't shred those tickets. You got to hand them out to the kids. When I have that story, I'll have it right here for you on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. That's it for me. I'm Sean Reynolds from Summit Properties Northwest, Reynolds and Kline Appraisal. I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.